the rear of the cottage. Oh, thank you. And you can see the addition is planned to be 6 foot out from the cottage and 13 foot wide. And it's, really the purpose is threefold. We want to remodel the bathroom. It's dated, it's old, it needs upgrading, and it's a very small area. So we'd like to have a little extra room so we can do basically a total remodel of that bathroom. And then in the bedroom, that's our bedroom when we're here, and there's no closet at all in the bedroom. I'm not sure what the thought process was there.
All you needed was bathing suit.
I think that must have been it.
And the Risen Station.
But, you know, we bring a few more things than that. So it's really to put a closet so we can store some clothes in there when we're out here, and hopefully when we live here. And that outside, you saw in the pictures, there's an outside water heater shed with a huge stovepipe vent sticking out of it that I think looks horrible. And so we'll get rid of that, and we want to do an on-demand hot water system and put that inside the house. So it's really threefold. And it's really just trying to make the cottage more comfortable and more usable for us. So the addition, I mean, we think would blend in to the cottage. The existing cottage and the development. I think you have this plan, but I just colored it up a little bit so you could see the addition. And we think it would clean it up a little bit. It would have the same wood shake siding as the rest of the cottage. Same roof pitch here as on the gable ends of the cottage. There's only be one bathroom window, that you can see that would face out the back. And it would not extend beyond the line of the rinsing station that's there now. So it would be between that and the hatchway. And again, it would also remove that outside water heater. So that's what we're trying to accomplish. And I know we're here, as Chair had mentioned, because Fairwinds is considered, I guess, a pre-existing non-conforming use. And your bylaws, zoning bylaws talk, I think, at least when I read it, two things. One, that we're not increasing the nonconformity of the current situation. And I don't think we are, because we're a two-bedroom, one-bath cottage now, and when we're said and done, we'll be a two-bedroom, one-bath cottage, hopefully nicer looking and more comfortable and more usable. And the other, I think, criteria is that it's not going to be a detriment to the neighborhood or the zoning district. And we feel it's going to be an improvement. It's going to increase the value of the property. It's going to be much more aesthetic looking, I think, from the rear. And given the location of our cottage and the planting around it and the fencing, it's really well screened from neighbors. So we think it's be much nicer looking.
Well, you did an awfully nice job of presenting that there, sir. Denise, you going to say anything, or you all set?
I'm really good.
You can rely on what he had to say. It's okay.
She was watching me.
Mr. Martin, any questions of our petitioner?
Really, I guess the relief required is because of the back lot line. You'll be 17 feet from that instead of 20 feet. Am I reading that correctly? Or?
Well, as we understand
other relief?
it's one parcel. Fairwinds, from front to back.
Even though we're looking at this plan that actually shows a bunch of lots.
Right, which are really just exclusive use areas, I guess is. But that's, when you look at the front being South C, this is actually the side lot line. So the side setback there is 15 feet, so we planned this to be in compliance with that. So I think what we're here for is just because it's a non-conforming use and we're making an extension.
You're adding square footage to a condominium cottage, in essence.
Which is pre-existing non-conforming, right. Okay. So.
I do note on one of the plans it's showing your leaching field over, well, I guess that's not a lot line, so that's irrelevant. Right. Okay.
Right.
Okay, no, I don't have any problem. I don't see this as anything that's not good for everybody.
Mr. Igo.
Yes, good evening.
Hi.
I don't really have any questions. I have a comment. I'm very familiar with this particular home. I'm friendly with the previous owners, Denise and Chris Cooper.
Oh, yeah.
And I've actually been in your home a number of times in the past before you bought it. And I do know a number of people that own inside Fairwinds. It's a very, very nice spot. We have done a previous approval, I believe, on the home to the right. I think John and Diane, if I'm not mistaken, well, actually, no, that was their parents in another location. This could be the first one in there. But at any rate, the only comment I would have is they've got plenty of room where they want to put this addition. So I don't think it's going to contribute to any undue hazard or nuisance, certainly. I think it'll fit in there nice, and I think it's a very reasonable request. That's the only comments I have. And I do see that you do have the approval from the association as well.
Yes.
Okay.
He takes all my thunder. Mr. Nicanello, any questions? No, thank you. Ms. Britta?
No question, just a comment, Mr. Chairman.
Sure.
We're always thrilled to see, all of us to see improvements, especially aesthetic improvements, and taking down, enclosing the shed, taking care of that back is something that kind of what we like to see always in Yarmouth and make our town look like Enfield, actually, which is a lovely town in Connecticut. So, no, other than that, Mr. Chairman, no comments at all.
Thank you.
Mr. Kelly?
No.
Are you going to be moving here when you finally get this addition built?
That's our plan.
Well, hurry up. What could be in Connecticut that's better
I
than here?
have to do that retirement thing first, but that's coming up, and I keep getting reminded that it's coming up.
We were both born and brought up in Massachusetts, so it would be coming back home.
Oh, see, we'll forgive you then. We'll also know
it was
that
a
you can
momentary
drive
lapse.
better than most people from Connecticut. All right, so the only correspondence we do have is that from Fair Winds Condominium Association, which, as Mr. Igo points out, does state that they have no objection to it. We always like to see that from the association, the Homeowners Association. Does anyone care to speak in favor of this petition? If so, please come to the microphone at the lectern. Seeing none. Does anyone care to speak in opposition to this petition? If so, please come to the microphone. Seeing none. We now close it to the public commentary on the petition. We open up the board discussion and deliberations. I think, in fairness to Mr. Kelly, who's joining us for the first time. And by the way, Tim Kelly, we want to welcome you here to our board. Thank you for being willing to come out and work on the town's behalf. It's a wonderfully enjoyable event. I'm sure you will go home and say after this that it's the best hour or so you've spent yet.
Sure I will.
In recent time. And it's only through the generosity of people that will agree to volunteer on behalf of the town of Yarmouth that we get things done around here. So everybody that volunteers, we appreciate certainly. And thank you for joining our group as somebody hopeful to help in the zoning issues of the town. So, let's start, in fairness to Mr. Kelly, though, let's start again with Mr. Martin. What are your thoughts, Dick?
I think it's a fairly small addition. It's not adding to the, bedroom count or anything like that. That might be more of a concern. And quite a bit of land around these cottages, as evidenced by their exclusive use zone on that map. And it's going to make everything look better, help taxes, and make life more comfortable for them, and the association's happy with it, so am I.
Mr. Igo, any comments?
I would only just reiterate what I said before. I think it's a very reasonable request. I think they meet the criteria of the bylaw, and I plan on supporting it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Mr. Nicanello?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you. I think it's a wonderful project. Yarmouth is a wonderful spot to live, even though alphabetically we're last on the list in the Commonwealth. We're right on top of all kinds of excitement around here, so thank you very much.
Ms. Britta?
No comments, Mr. Chairman.
And Mr. Kelly, did you want to chime in with anything?
No, thank you.
Well, let me say that I agree with everybody that just said that this is a very modest addition. I agree wholeheartedly with Mr. Igo's comments that this will create no undue hazard, nuisance, nor congestion, and will be in keeping with the character of the neighborhood and town, both now and in the future. This is a lovely little cottage community over there. Everybody keeps their property up decently and nice, and to see a little bit more expansion of such a reasonable and modest amount, I certainly can support as well. Is anybody prepared to make a motion?
I'd like to make a motion that we approve the petition as requested.
Second.
Is there any condition to that?
No condition.
All right, and you agree, Mr. Nicanello, on that second?
Affirmatively.
Does the board care to have any discussion on the motion before proceeding to a vote? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. So that carries unanimously. What's now going to happen is a decision will need to be drafted. That decision gets filed with the town clerk's office. Once filed, 20 days must elapse. That's a technical waiting period for people that may wish, people who have an interest, who may wish to appeal from our decision tonight. It's not likely that there'll be an appeal, but we still do have to go through that 20-day period. At the close of that 20 days, you'll then have a special permit granted to you, which will need to be brought to the Registry of Deeds in Barnstable. It needs to be recorded, and proof of its recordation needs to be returned to our board. Ms. Clark, the most vital component of our board and our business, will give you all the information you need to accomplish that, okay?
I'm sure she will. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Safety, you going back to Connecticut tonight?
Oh, no.
Oh, good.
We're here for the Cape for a while.
Oh, good. We don't want to see you driving late at night back to Connecticut.
All right.
Thank you very
Thanks
much.
for having us. Thanks
All right,
again.
it brings us to our next petition, that of Shira Rosenberg. I hope I'm saying that right.
You can say it a number of ways, but I'll take it that way.
What?
She said that's fine.
I couldn't hear. I forgot my hearing aids tonight. I'm sorry. This is concerning property located at 606 to 610 Route 28, West Yarmouth, Massachusetts.
Yes, yes. And as I said, with the name, you could say
We'll
it
get to
a
you.
number of ways.
That property,
Okay.
we'll get to you. We're going to invite you to speak in just a minute, okay? If I can finish what I'm saying. I know you're nervous. This property is in a zoning district B2. This evening, our applicant seeks a special permit under zoning bylaw 104.3.2, subparagraph 3, and/or a variance under 203.5 to increase building height and required setback. Good evening.
Good evening. My name's John Lavelle from Baxter Nye Engineering. I'm here with Haya Rosenberg, the owner applicant, as well as the builder, Jan Kvitok.
Jan, what?
Kvitok, K-V-I-T-O-K. So we're here before you, hopefully to get a special permit for the redevelopment of the site. It's 606 to 610 Route 28, map 32, lot 66 for the record. Lot size just under 8,000 square feet. It's in a B2 zone. This is a site that the building was destroyed by fire, and the building has since been removed. It's a pre-existing non-conforming property with respect to lot size, lot frontage, and side and rear setbacks. The project went before design review on September 3rd and site plan review on September 17th. We got comments from each of those boards, and we incorporated their comments into the plan that's now before you for the ZBA special permit. The building itself is, in terms of setbacks, it's further from the street by about 4 feet. The side setback is less non-conforming than it previously was by about a foot. In the rear, there was 3.2 feet to the building in the rear, and we held that 3.2-foot setback with the back deck and stairs. The building is further, I believe it's 6.8 feet, I think, from the rear setback. So it's less non-conforming than it used to be. But with the redevelopment of the site, some green spaces being added, trees, shrubs, a handicap parking space, which they previously did not have. There was no drainage system whatsoever on that site, and we're adding an underground recharging system to handle all the water from the 25-year storm, as well as a brand-new septic system. Vastly improves the site because they had a cesspool there previously. So we pretty much addressed the comments that design review and site plan review had, and we're looking for special permit from you tonight.
Okay, well, thank you. Not picking on you, Mr. Martin, but Mr. Martin, any questions of our petitioner?
No, I viewed this at design review, and it's actually a lovely plan, and very nice redevelopment. Only reason they need relief is the second floor apartment. the building going higher. Like many of these sites, it's probably a little heavier usage than the lot would normally accommodate, and therefore it doesn't may have quite as much parking and so forth as you might like, for that matter. But I think overall, it's a big improvement, certainly to what's there now and what even was there before. And it's a nice-looking building, and I think it's going to be a very good attribute. One comment that I think we broached at design review anyways is because of the fairly small number of parking spaces, that when the adjacent site that apparently you own as well, when that gets redeveloped, which I hear might be happening before too long, which would be a wonderful thing as well, that maybe a couple extra spaces could be provided, especially like for the apartment. They had to open up some additional parking for the 2 storefronts. And I know the site that you have to work with here is very limited and tough to deal with, so I can understand that, but a couple more parking spaces being provided in the future, redevelopment of next door would be a nice attribute.
The idea is that they would.
Now, you have to speak, if you would, ma'am,
Oh.
if you'd speak into the mic,
The idea
because
is that
people
they
at
will-
home want to hear everything you say.
They would most likely utilize the parking next door, and that would be allowed, and I would, of course, encourage it, so, yeah.
Mr. Igo?
Yes, good evening. A couple questions. Well, one is a comment. I think it is a great idea. I certainly support the redevelopment of this piece of property, and I think this will look very nice. But I have some concerns about the lack of parking on this site. You did indicate, and I know that you do own the vast majority of the land around it, and that unfortunately we can't put any in the back. I had some discussions today with the building inspector relative to getting some additional parking. Would there be, and I know you haven't done it yet, okay, and I know that the redevelopment of the other parcel is in the future, but what I would like to see with this plan, if you would consider it, is to show some parking in the rear of the post office, just on paper, that adds maybe 4 or 5 spots in the future to access the upstairs apartment. You don't have to put it in. I just want you to draw a plan to submit to us so you have additional parking back there. Would that be agreeable to you to do that?
We actually do have a plan that we can just circulate. It's a preliminary kind of the site, so you just can get a...
Okay, if you're going to pass this up, we need to keep it. That's all I'm pointing out to you.
That's fine, you can keep it.
Thanks. Thank you.
Just so we can demonstrate that there's actually currently 4 extra parking spaces with the existing, right, it's a concept based on the existing uses in that strip. So we have 4 extra parking spaces as of now, so.
Like I said, if we could put something on a plan, does that show the post office in here? Right here? My idea is to put some spots right in there to access the rear of this new building so they can have a walkway that just walks right in, and then they can access the parking for the upstairs apartment or apartments is something I'd like to talk to you about, too. Would that be something that you'd be agreeable to do, to provide us with that? And then in the future, once you develop that, you could put those parking spaces in to access the rear of the building?
We are actually only short 1 parking space, correct?
Well, I understand that, but to look at this and what you really want to do with it feasibly, you know, if you had some decent retail business in what you're going to have right now, I think you're going to have a parking problem.
Right.
Relative to the upstairs apartments in the rear, I notice you have a 2,100 square foot apartment with a close to 500 square foot master bedroom.
So 1,900, isn't it?
I was in a mansion in Newport. I wasn't quite sure if that bedroom was quite 500 square feet. This is my point. I think you could actually get 2 apartments up there.
I wanted that, but I
Well-
wasn't sure that I would be.
Well, you didn't ask for that.
I know.
Okay, so we can't give that to you.
I
But
see.
and I don't know how the others feel about that, but I certainly wouldn't be opposed to that. I would only be opposed to that if you came in here tonight, you didn't have the parking. If we can get the parking, I would suggest that maybe you come back in the future, divide that up, because you can get two nice 1,200 square foot or 1,100 so apartments. We need the housing stock. It'd be a great place to have that. I think it would also, be good for the businesses downstairs and in the area there, to do business with you, having residents near on the property. So I would certainly support that. Again, tonight, I think it's a little difficult. You didn't ask for it, and we'd need to show the parking for
Since we
that.
are under time constraints to rebuild this property, we didn't want to push it, so we know one dwelling is allowed in current zoning, so we didn't want to, we didn't want to push it because we can't afford to,
I understand.
Lose time.
come up with a different game plan.
No, I'm just throwing it out there. I mean, if you want to keep it as is, you can.
Right, we
Okay,
appreciate it.
but I'm just speaking for me. If you did come in tonight and you had adequate parking to support the 2 units, I would certainly look in favor of something like that.
That's great.
I wanted to say that in the past, it was always, by my family, considered to be one, used as one piece of property. So that, I would continue that usage. I don't see that it should be any problem, but there's going to be a massive amount of parking in the rear, and to accommodate the businesses in the front, which I think in the past didn't really exist.
Oh, I think
Yeah.
if we were talking about a situation where, you had the other parts developed right now, this wouldn't even be an issue. You could just say, okay, how many spots do you need? We'll give you whatever you need
Right.
behind the post office, and you could access it there and go upstairs. But I'm just thinking in the future, if you want to draw a plan out
Yeah.
that shows what the parking would be, and whether you want to do it or not, I'm not sure. But if you were to come back and ask for 2 units, because I think that 1 unit, that size, is a bit large for what you're trying to do with it.
I agree.
So,
I agree, yeah. I wanted
I
to
mean,
keep it simple.
again, it's not before us tonight, but it's something you may want to consider. But other than that, I think it's a fine improvement. And I have read the site plan review comment sheet as well as the design review comments, which I'm very glad to hear. And Mr. Martin does a very good job. By the way, I just want to thank you, Dick, because you do a very good job on that design review committee. That's all I had, though. Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
So what is this?
That is-
That's a rendering, I think, of the entire future of the spot.
The entire parcel?
Yeah.
But that isn't what we're being asked to
No.
consider
That's the
tonight.
lot on the right side.
Oh, I know right
of
where
the
it is.
sheet, Right.
Yeah.
I'm trying to figure out what is it intended for us tonight? Is this intended to show us a component of what this property is going to become?
It was
You would look-
intended to show you
Show
that there was
the
more
additional parking
parking.
that was in question, that we can provide it in the future.
office.
No, I understand.
I was going to ask that they, on paper.
I'm asking you, is this a rendering of something you're intending to do at this site?
Yes.
In the future, it's just a concept, it's not.
Okay, well, here's my problem, okay? All along Route 28, we look at businesses that have parking in the front. And in my belief, I believe some of that parking and some of the front curb work and landscaping actually sits in the Route 28 layout, okay? But that's got nothing to do with us here tonight. That's got to do with people that spend money to improve that land owned by the state. There may be no Route 28 layout on this property. But what I am concerned about is parking out front, and what can we do? So if this is going to be a whole site improvement, I'd like to see the parking on this building be behind. I just don't know why we are encouraging parking on the street anymore
This-
on our, what we're trying to redo
I agree.
as a central artery in this town.
This is a preliminary drawing, and so it's incomplete.
That's
and-
actually a
yeah.
goal, that's a goal. We're trying to
I
push
appreciate that.
as much parking
I
to the
appreciate
back
that.
as
But
we
you're
can.
planning on putting parking in front of this, correct?
Right.
Well, with
And
that one, we have
why
no
can't the building be
choice.
brought forward and the parking be put out back?
Because we don't have the time to come up with the comprehensive site plan for the entire.
I'm only talking
pro-
about this site.
Well, I think I might be able to explain that if you turn to the back.
Sure. I'm happy to have any explanation as to why parking can't be put in the back.
Well, they have a problem with their rear lot line. They're right, they don't own this property right here.
But they can bring the building forward to the street, can't you?
Well, can I make a comment about some of this? First of all, it was inherited, and I also had to take care of my brother and sister who were part owners of it. As a result, and because there was a fire, and because of the time constraint, I mean, my original desire was to fix up the storefronts. That would have been the normal procedure for me to start with, and then attend to that. However, there's a time constraint, and I think we have to have it finished in order to comply. It has to be finished by,
July next year.
July. And what happened was, I guess the clock started from the time of the fire.
Correct.
And I didn't own it at the time of the fire. It was still in my mother's name. And now, only in August, around August 8th, the rest of the parcel went into my name. And this parcel is in land court, but I have permission to build and go forward with it. So we're just waiting for the final approval from the land court. And they have all the information they requested, which was like the chain of ownership. All of it was within the family, but I don't live in the country right now, but I'm coming
Does your
once a
family
month.
does your family own what's depicted in this drawing?
No, they do
You don't?
not. No, I do now, but
Someone in your family.
they
You're the petitioner here.
did, and I wanted to fix it up 10 years ago, but I was prevented from doing that. So I went through
I
a
guess I'm not gonna
considerable
get an answer,
amount
so-
to
Okay, I'm going
Yes,
to,
yes.
Put
you don't have to
myself
go
into-
any further
to put
answer.
myself
I'm
into
going to
a
pass it on to
position of
Mr.
being able to
Nicanello.
do
He
that,
can ask
yeah.
you questions, and I'll come back and ask
Okay.
my questions after I
Yeah.
hear all of it.
Yeah.
Please, Mr. Nicanello.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for trying to do what has been needed for a long time. I'm not sure when your family bought the property, but I'm sure in the future there's going to be a time when you don't own it either. So that raises a question to me that in the future, maybe 50 or 100 years from now, these four parcels could be split up. And that kind of concerns me a little bit, because even though you say no, you never know what happens, our board is designed to look here in the future.
Correct.
Okay? So when you start mixing properties and parking, and we didn't even talk about any freight delivery. Okay? If you're going to have stores there, stores are going to require trucks. Okay?
That's the post.
And what was made in the, I'm pro-business. I own multiple businesses in town. I want you to do the right thing. I want you to be successful. But, you know, these are concerns that come before us, and we have to look at them very carefully, okay? There was some comments noted at design review about parking, and to me, it just seems like what Mr. Martin said, it's a lot going on for a small lot. I can be persuaded, but then no one's going to answer me in about, 60 years when someone else owns it, what's going to happen.
When you say a
That's all
lot
I need
going-
to say. Thank you.
Oh,
Okay.
Can I ask what?
May
you
may I,
mean?
may I, okay, so,
Now, you have to sit, you have to carry a mic
sorry.
with you. You can stand if
all
you'd
right,
like, but
all
you
right,
have to
that's-
carry the mic.
Sitting is good. All right, so, we are actually, we are allowed to rebuild the building by right on the existing footprint, same,
Yeah, sure.
same nature.
Right, yeah.
So before we started design on this building, we met with Kathleen Williams and Grills, we're trying to improve the site. So we actually made the footprint of the building smaller, and we pushed the building backwards to improve safety. Because people used to back out on Route 28. So we actually tried to work with town to make the site safer. And we made the actual footprint of the building smaller. So we're trying to do the right thing. So that's why we tried to add some additional square footage on the second floor, which there was some, but it wasn't on the record, so we couldn't rebuild it with the second story, because it wasn't on the assessor's card. It was, it was nowhere to be found, but there was finished space on the second floor in the previous building. So, with all that said, could we make the building smaller? We probably could, but it wouldn't be viable for the owner, because there needs to be some return on the investment. So we can't make the building, narrower than it is, because then it just doesn't make sense to invest in that project, so.
Okay. Ms. Britta, any questions?
Yes, I do. Mr. Chairman, thank you. Just picking up again on the parking, you intend to have an apartment on the second floor with 3 bedrooms. Now, we were just saying with kids and talk about grouping up and all that, you could have 6 people living in that apartment, 2 in each bedroom. Where are they going to park?
There's 2 parking spaces required per dwelling.
So what do they do with the other 4? What if each one of the tenants,
Well,
let's say it's a group of 20-year-olds, and they all...
We don't go by what if. We follow regulation that you guys have in town. So there's 2 parking spaces required per dwelling, which we design, parking and the building based upon, so.
Right, but that still doesn't answer the question. What would you do if you had 6 tenants in that apartment? 6 20-year-olds, each with a car. Where are they going to park?
In the main lot.
Right.
Why not?
In the front?
No.
Well,
In
adjacent
the-
parcel.
In the back, in the adjacent parcel.
The adjacent parcel, you're talking about going toward the post office.
Exactly,
Right.
inside the plaza.
Just to comment on the post office, Mr. Chairman, before we get too enthusiastic about parking near a post office, I think we probably ought to talk to the post office. There are massive security concerns with cars and trucks parking near post offices. So I'd like to, before we can take that as an absolute given.
I mean, I would think that the post office has at least a land lease for that building, right?
They may.
Do they own the building, or do they?
No, they lease the
They just
building.
No, they
just
lease it.
lease the building?
They lease it.
And that leasehold is theirs, right? So we can't talk about off-premises parking as a solution here. We've gone through this
theirs.
before with
Not sure what
commercial
you-
undertakings.
the property where the post office is, right?
Yes.
Doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It's a leasehold.
Leasehold.
The tenant might have a problem with it. Tenant might say, no, you're not parking any of your cars over here, they're paying you rent.
Right.
Last time I checked, I think they're the federal government, I'm not sure, but,
They still are.
okay. Any other questions?
Would be,
Just 2
would-
other comments,
Sure.
Mr. Chairman. Again, picking up on your comment about the parking in front.
Right.
It's always gratifying to see people make a non-conforming lot less non-conforming. But I think the issue of parking goes to what the chairman was saying about when you started talking about parking, the conversation should have been pulling that building forward and not having parking on 28 at all. Because that's actually what the town has been fostering for decades, is not having a lot of parking on 28. So I don't know, I guess that conversation didn't take place. You just sort of went to step 2 and tried to modify what you had, and that's gratifying. But it was not, I think the initial conversation should have been, how do we get parking off 28 to begin with? And then this is sort of-
May I again?
Sure.
So, again, we are under time constraint here.
Right.
So if we don't rebuild this property, it's going to be unbuildable lot, pretty much, because it's just so small that we won't be able to put anything on this lot.
Right, and I
We
appreciate
don't
that.
have time to create a plan for parking for this building in the back of the property within that time limit. We just started working on this 3 months ago, so
And I appreciate the
that's
time
why.
constraints, but I have to tell you, the time constraint issue is your issue.
Yeah.
You are under time constraints because of things that were occurring that you had no control over. But in my mind, I don't think that's, and certainly when I make a decision, that is not one of the factors I would use to consider, in my decision-making. But a more macro question is, there is going to be a zoning amendment offered next Tuesday night at Town Hall at town meeting, to develop the rest of to the west. Why isn't this being incorporated into, is it because of the time constraint? Why isn't this being incorporated into that broader discussion?
Correct.
Exactly, as you said, it is the time constraint. It's only about that. Yeah,
It's the July 2020 deadline.
that's what we're up against, yeah.
Because it is a separate lot. If it was all one lot, it's a different
Well, it could be,
situation.
but the zoning consideration, had you had the conversation, the zoning change could have incorporated that lot had you not had this time constraint. Is that
They had
fair to say?
they didn't have nothing to do with the parking or anything. It was just changing a zoning from a residential to B2 on those lots, so we can create a better design for the parking, so we have the same rules on all the lots that are
But my
connected.
point was, because this is right next to that larger parcel, were it not for that time constraint, this could have been part of that discussion had you not been under the time constraint to get something done with this particular parcel.
Yeah, but that's correct.
All right, and then one last comment. I'm not totally thrilled with the vegetation and the one or two trees that you're adding. I think a lot more could be done to make the site look better if we improve it, if we approve it.
There will be landscaping through the whole parking lot. All of what you're seeing is just a very, very scarce
Yeah, but
rendering right there.
On this particular lot,
Right.
we're saying, yes.
Oh, you mean on this?
Yeah, I'm not talking about the bigger one. I'm talking about the
Right.
one you're here
But
tonight.
we could do more for landscaping.
I don't think it's, I think it's
We're putting
fairly
it-
pedestrian. It's not great. And,
It's a lot better than it was.
but that's
so-
not, we're not looking for a lot better. We're looking for what could be done to make it
As I said,
optimum.
we tried to work with town to improve the site, improve safety, improve the drainage.
Well, you get the safety because you're parking in front of the building. If you weren't parking in front of the building, you wouldn't have a safety issue, as the chairman pointed out. But anyway, those are my comments, Mr.
There
Chairman.
would, by the way, it would be impossible to get to the back of the building, even if you moved the building forward. It's so close to, it's pretty close to the post office. There's not really enough to get into the back, even if you moved it forward.
But don't you have some parking in back? Aren't you contemplating some parking
Well,
in back?
can I?
We don't own the lot in the back. I don't know, I'm not sure if you're referring to,
The
it's a separate
property.
lot behind this lot.
Correct.
That's not us. If we own the lot behind it, it's totally separate lot. I'm not sure if that's what you're thinking. We do not own this lot. If you would, then it would be a totally different scenario.
Belongs to
here.
the house next door, and they own all, our property was closer to their line, and that's why we pulled
Pulled it
back.
back,
That
yep.
was an L-shaped building, and it almost, it came within, what, inches of the other property, and we tried to change that in order to accommodate it and not have it as close.
What kind of businesses do you contemplate at grade here?
Simple, more like an office, not high traffic.
Office retail, that's what it's designed.
Something that would close at 5 or 6 at night, not be open at night?
Correct.
Right. No, I think the open at night would be more in the middle.
Grant some type of an easement.
And you don't think that would bother your tenants?
Could they do that?
If something was open till 10 o'clock at night?
If the post office.
No,
I think the mixed uses are encouraged, correct? With the combination of retail
Right, but that's,
in the Village Overlay District where this building is actually in. So I'm not sure if we're trying to go back or we're trying to encourage the
I'm just
mixed.
asking you, do you
I'm sorry?
think certain types of activity in that space, I'm asking you, do you think it would bother your tenants if they had?
There are some people that like the noise. I'm not sure. Some people like quiet. They live at the end of the cul-de-sac, and some people like to live on the main street. You know, I'm sure there's a place for everyone. We're not all the same. So there's people that love to live on the main street and walk out and walk to the restaurant and have fun and go across the street to Red Face Jack's and then go home. They don't have to drive. So I'm sure that you know, it may be a great spot for someone to live right there. So.
Well done. Mr. Kelly?
How long is the lease with the post office? And does it cover the entire property, or is it just the building and X
Just the
amount of parking
building.
spots?
Just the building and the parking spots.
So-
And actually, just the building.
Parcel, right?
So it's
That's
not the whole
parcel.
parcel? Because you have a lot of land behind the building, the post office itself?
It's just the post office, and we're in the middle of negotiating the next 5 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
So there could be parking back there? So if you haven't leased the whole property to them, technically you could get some parking back
It
there?
isn't, the property really isn't leased to them. When you said it's a leasehold, I'll have to check. I will have to check on the exact
Terms of the
terms of
lease.
that,
Right.
because we're in the middle of that right now. But I believe it's just the building. I mean, in other words, no differently than any of the other shops.
So technically, you could, if you could basically get an easement for that property for parking spots from this, if you did it, if you didn't.
That's the goal, that's what we have.
Right,
on-
so,
on
but
the-
to have it on paper, though, instead of just saying, or even just abolish the property line.
Let me say this.
And the post office for sure would object to that.
This is a,
In response to that, I
this
have
is
an
a,
answer.
concept. They own all this
Right,
property.
I know, I was at the meeting.
Now, here's the back, they don't own this property right here, so
Right.
that's the back of the building. My idea was that they walk through a walkway up to this
Right.
area right here, which could be the parking for the upstairs units. Now, they'd have to obviously grant some type of a lease.
Right.
Well, they own the property, I was gonna say an easement, but something would have
So
to
the
be.
tenants-
So
the
just
tenants
make it a,
here-
sorry. Go ahead.
May I clarify
Have
something?
an actual easement and
for you?
put it on paper, it's an actual easement.
Oh, yeah, it would have to be some dedicated,
Petitioner would like to clarify.
go ahead.
With regard to easements, there's a couple other considerations here. One of them, and one of the main ones, is financial. And I have spent a considerable amount of money, acquiring the property, the surveys, the 21E that I'm in the middle of right now. Title searches, everything that I have done up until now, the planning, the architecture. And I've definitely gone well beyond what I anticipated I was going to have to spend. I am applying for loans right now, and there is a definite financial constraint, so I don't have forever, and I don't have a bottomless pit. So to draw from, a well to draw from, in that sense. I have a budget that I can work with, and it has to make sense and it has to work. And
Okay, I think we heard you on that.
Yeah.
Are you all done, Mr. Kelly? Did you
Yeah,
have something?
I was just going to go along with him, is just to have an easement. to,
So,
provide
so-
that
so I'm
would-
gonna jump in, okay? Because I gotta tell you, to sit here and listen that this is an improvement over what existed, when this is the, please, when this is the single most neglected property on Route 28 for decades, it's so disingenuous in my mind.
By the way, I'm completely in agreement with you.
You know, I like the
And-
design, I want you to understand, I like the
Yes.
design, but I'm furious about this whole strip to begin with. And to hear the talk that, oh gee, it's affecting my pocketbook. It's been affecting this town for decades, okay? And it's been affecting it in a negative way, and it's unfortunate that the owners of this property collectively have been allowed to have been, this property wasn't otherwise taken and destroyed long ago and rebuilt. You know, it's just ridiculous. And the only reason you're here is because there was a fire on a piece of property that destroyed a building.
That's not the only reason I'm here.
So I've said my piece. Yeah, I'm not going to debate it with you, honestly. That's where my fury lies. On the idea of two apartments upstairs, that's your decision as a property owner, as far as I'm concerned. I'd rather keep it at one because, quite frankly, it's going to be two studios. Or two very small apartments.
Well, they're not asking for that tonight anyway.
Sure, but I mean, I'm just commenting on your comments, that's all. I'd love to see all the parking as you consider the redesign of the rest of this property. Please let me speak.
I am.
In the rear, to the extent any design proposal needs relief from this board coming forward, the rest of the parking on this on the other parcels, you really should consider putting it in the rear, and no more parking on Route 28. Telling you, because if it comes before me and I'm still on this board, I'm going to have a tough time approving it if you're looking for any relief from this board.
Let me ask
On
you
this,
something.
please let me speak, ma'am. On this parcel, I can absolutely agree with everything I've heard here, which is this is a fabulous, fabulous building you're considering constructing here. But the entire parcel is a sin. On the parking, I'll concede that the parking needs to go in front of this building. I actually thought you did own the lot out back, and so an easy accommodation could be made there. I'm very concerned about Mr. Niconello's point, which is where do your vendors unload here? Because if I see one of them unloading on Route 28 and I'm passing by, I'm going to tell you something. I'm going to be the first person to call the chief of police and have the citations issued if he'll listen to me, okay? Because we've run into this problem before, not far down the road, when it comes to a particular other business that then listened to us and bought the property across the street and ameliorated the problem. Okay, they did a wonderful job of that, the old vacuum cleaner site, and they should be commended for their efforts to listen to what we had to say about that. But I'm going to tell you sincerely, I'm going to speak beyond this parcel just for a moment. Anything comes on that other parcel in which this board needs to give relief, I will be the most vocal of people objecting to it if what I see is parking along Route 28 or up to the road on the other side. So having said that, let's get to the merits of this particular property. We have a number of conditions that you're aware of set forth in the community development and planning. Are you aware of that? The September 17, 2019 conditions they've stated or suggested? Community development and plan. Are you aware of it, or do I need to read it? Let me read it. Relocate the bike rack closer to the building entrances. Is that going to be done? It's going to be a condition if we grant any relief here. The stockade fencing gate around the dumpster should note the fence height at 6 feet. Provide detail on the speed bump to ensure proper drainage. Consider removal type to allow for ease of winter. Oh, consider one of those rubber speed bumps in order to allow for winter plowing. The curb width has already been addressed, right? Haven't you reduced the curb, changed the curb width?
Hasn't been changed at all.
Okay, well, is it going to be to conform with the recommendation?
There's no proposal at this time to change the width of the curb. It would have to be approved by the state, and if anything, the state would rather have it larger. The fire department would rather have it larger, if anything, so to decrease the opening.
If the fire department wants it larger, I'm fine with it.
Right.
That's fine. Okay. Does anyone in our audience care to speak in favor of this petition? If so, please come to the microphone and tell us what you have to say. Does anyone in our audience care to speak in opposition to this petition? If so, please come to the microphone and tell us what you have to say. Wow, hearing none. I really expected all of you people to stand up and want to tell me something. Hearing none, we then close it to the public commentary on the petition or open up the board discussion, deliberations, and we'll start with Mr. Kelly tonight. I'm going to try you, Mr. Kelly, give you your first dry run on the
I wasn't aware that I
start.
was going to be able to even talk tonight.
You talk.
Okay.
You talk all you want.
I'm in agreement with the parking is an issue. If there's some kind of an easement that can be set for the other property, that's the only thing that I'd be perfectly fine with that.
We'll be happy to do that.
That would be my only comment.
I'm sorry, what did you say, sir?
So we'll be happy to dedicate some parking in the future development towards this
I
building.
think that's our smartest way, instead of requiring an easement. If you own the parcels, you don't even need to get, well, you
Correct.
could give an easement, but you wouldn't have to.
It's a
But in
common
any event,
ownership,
in
so
any
it-
event, as if and when you develop that spot next door, 4 of those parking
Correct.
spots should be dedicated
Correct.
in some fashion to any tenant that you might have in this.
Can I just ask a question?
Residential tenant or retail, commercial employee parking.
Is this piece of property, is this a separate piece of property from the other property?
Yes.
By deed?
It's a separate lot.
So they would need an easement, wouldn't they?
Yes.
But that's fine, but they, first of all, they can't give us an easement over what they now have.
Correct.
Potentially, because it's the post office leasehold.
Well, yeah, but they don't own the post office. See, there's a big lot behind the post office.
Yes, but that doesn't abut this, except for the post office property.
Correct, yeah. Which is,
Okay.
Am I wrong on that?
It's all one property, post office property and.
I understand, but there's a leasehold there, guys and gals. That means that there is a lease that surrounds not only the building's use, but the parking surrounding it that exists. I don't know that we can compel these people to give us a lease that infringes upon that lease and its legal obligations of these people to the tenant. What we're saying, my suggestion would be,
No,
as if and when developed,
Not without knowing the terms of lease.
sure,
Yeah.
sure. As if and when developed. they dedicate-
maybe that's something we can incorporate. The lease is being negotiated as we speak.
Great.
So we can incorporate that, so we can, if there's any additional parking on the post office lot, we can dedicate that.
So we can make a condition that you'll attempt to
Correct.
obtain that within
May-
that lease. That's
May be
fine.
able to do that. So we have to check with the
Will that
attorney that's
satisfy you?
working on that.
Well,
There's been no
maybe,
mention of anything to do with
because
parking.
unless,
But they
the
need
problem
parking
is
and may
we
have
approve something
Yeah,
tonight,
which I'm fine
and then
to
they find out they
accommodate.
can't do
I
what
would
we
like to
want them to
accommodate.
do, then
Yeah.
what do we do then?
Yeah.
Well, here. If we look just at this, and you can see that the northwest corner abuts exactly the end of to the end of the post office building. They have a leasehold. They have designated some portion of this parcel 32.65 as a leasehold for the U.S. Post Office.
Right.
That's probably a very difficult lease in terms of the federal government dictating in most of the terms. For us to now say you must create an easement back to something that isn't even existing yet, I don't know how we do that.
Well,
So we either deny it on the merits tonight of insufficient parking, or we try to accommodate, but that's what it
Well,
may
there-
mean.
Well,
there-
Sir,
Sorry.
please.
To accommodate.
This is when we get to talk.
Okay.
I tell you what I would like to see. I'd like to see the terms of the lease with the post office and see what they expect for this.
When's your lease going to be negotiated with the post office?
We're in the middle of it right now.
Yeah, I'm not comfortable with that. I like this building, but I can't approve this with just these parking spaces out front for all what's going to be happening here. And the issue of the deliveries would be an issue. I mean, I'm not, when you say you need these type of, these spaces here, I mean, do you have any tenants for the lower units?
I'm working with a broker right now.
Well, that's something else I think
someone
we should
that's
talk about.
actually
I mean, we're
assembling.
not going to allow them to open a restaurant there, are we?
Well, I have no idea what the use is. I don't know how they could do a restaurant because there would be insufficient parking. Then we'd have enough parking for a restaurant
They did the
use.
easement on the other side.
Well,
I think the parking is going to dictate the use.
Correct.
I think you're right about that.
Even for the proposed parking right now, it appears that you're requiring, that there are 9 spaces required. Is that right? I saw it somewhere here. 9.5 spaces, actually, which I guess would mean 10 spaces. And we're providing 7 spaces, which was the same number that were there before.
But you're not really,
So we're short 3 spaces even for the 2 required for the apartment upstairs and the square footage for the 2 retail or whatever units.
Some of the previous tenants from years ago lived there and parked there.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And
I'm
there
just
wasn't
saying,
any parking back there.
That's the whole parking thing where we come into that we're short.
I mean, we're not even being asked to give parking relief here. If they can't, they certainly couldn't put a restaurant in here because they wouldn't have enough, whatever their seating is, that's a pretty good-sized building. So whatever their seating is, it's going to dictate, would dictate the number of spaces.
This is
they
based
would
on
need.
retail and residential.
Correct.
I see 3 retail businesses here.
2.
Well, it's broken into
Two?
2 on the, yeah, it's 2.
That goes to the upstairs.
That's only, okay, oh, I
that's
see,
just
okay.
a
All
depiction
right, thank you
to
for
the,
clarifying that.
What are the required parking? What is the required parking here?
9.5 spaces.
9.5?
So they need relief for this, for the,
They don't need relief for it, do they?
No, they're not asking for that. They're asking relief on the height from 16 to 20.
I haven't heard any request for relief on parking.
No.
I think you may need that.
well,
They need,
I didn't see it on the site plan review comment sheet.
Nope.
I mean, you can rebuild as a matter of right what you have there, but you're increasing the nonconformity, aren't you, by adding the units upstairs?
No.
Why not?
What,
Oh, I don't think there's any debate about it. We're not going to debate if you're increasing the nonconformity. Of course you are. Of course you are.
but
I mean-
as far as setbacks go, or?
No, the use.
The use.
The overall use of the, you're adding, so we've got residential, I don't think they meet the parking requirements. I think they need relief from parking. I think they need relief for the residential upstairs, too. And,
height. I think height
Well-
relief.
We consulted with a lawyer.
They've asked for no use relief. They've asked for no parking relief. So I don't, I mean,
Use
all
relief is
that
not
we're being
required.
asked tonight, sir, all we're being asked tonight is to approve the building that we've been asked to look at. I'm not approving it as to permitted residential use or retail use or anything down below.
I just, before everybody, let's just talk this out for a second as to what we think they need, okay? It could have been something that's missed, we don't want you to leave, and then all of a sudden you can't get a building permit. Or you can get a building permit, but you don't have the parking demand, so they're not gonna give you an occupancy permit for
There
it,
you go.
okay? Because that's where you might have
We
a
would
problem.
That's why I think we're in here way
absolutely grant
premature.
relief in the main lot for people that need
Well,
to access it for that lot.
I think you have the right to rebuild what you had there, okay? But you're asking for more than that tonight. You're asking for residential space up top that you didn't have before.
Correct.
The increase in the height, I think, I don't know why,
That's the relief.
I don't know why you need increase in the height. Well, why is that?
So,
Get the residential.
It's not the same as what was there.
That's the only
That's where
reason.
the increase in nonconformity is.
Right, that's the increase in the nonconformity, the height,
That's what
right?
we are
'Cause this is a
seeking
raise in
relief.
You're adding residential to what was a commercial use before, right?
See,
Well, it was residential.
So now you're adding commercial to what was residential.
No, it was both. It was
mixed
both. It
before.
was,
When
there
was
was a
this
tattoo
residential?
shop in there,
When
and
was it
they
ever
used to live in
residential? Can
there,
somebody
and
tell
a
me that?
fishing and tackle
I'm
shop. and
pretty
he used-
familiar with this building right here.
Yeah.
If it was,
When
if
was
it was
it
residential, it wasn't
It was-
permitted residential.
right,
It was a
right. Well, that-
fishing
that-
and tackle shop on one side and a tattoo shop on the other side, and the tattoo shop dwelled on the second story, and
But it
they
was
they
never
lived there.
permitted, so it wasn't on the card.
And basically, when we tried to redesign it, it just seemed scant
We didn't
in
have
terms of
I-
living
I-
space.
I-
So we wanted to increase the height and make that proper. That was.
I think
yeah.
for, I mean, if we can kind of bring this around, but I'll just tell you my concerns. I don't think there's enough parking on this site.
I agree.
Why can't I grant parking in the main lot?
If
mean-
you,
Because there's no main lot.
Well, there's
No,
more
I'm
lots.
talking about the
Oh, no,
rest of the
I know
strip
what you're-
and what's behind it, the lot next door, behind the post office.
There's no parking there yet, is there? First
Well-
first of all, quite candidly, you can't look at off-premises parking as a solution to your parking constraints here. That's pretty clear. We've had this occasion once with that restaurant down on 6A, where they had off-site parking for employees only. So I could wrap my head around the employees of this facility would have to have parking in your yet-to-be-developed parking lot, and that you would put 2 residential spots over there as well, dedicated to the tenants that might live in this. But we do not allow off-premises parking to accommodate parking, a lack of appropriate parking on a site. If I'm being told by you that all uses that you envision here can be accommodated by 9.5 site,
What if they deed?
parking sites.
That's a separate, this is a separate lot from the rest of it, right? It's not all one lot.
That little
Separate
lot
lot.
is
It's a separate lot. Let me just suggest an
Right.
idea. They could deed them
Parking.
parcel.
But it's not developed,
No, I understand,
Sean.
I'm just
We're in
saying
the middle
what
of
you could do.
developing it now. There's
You
the
could
21E,
deed them.
there's the
We're
survey.
open to,
We're,
we're open to
we've just, in
suggestions.
3 months,
So
I've done a
If you see
survey.
any way that we can,
Ma'am, you can't do that.
Sorry.
You know
Okay,
there's going to be...
we actually want to have this run in somewhat of a manner of
I'm sorry.
decorum.
I'm sorry.
And we all can't be talking over each other.
I understand. I'm sorry.
So you were saying, sir, please.
as I was saying, we are open to suggestions. So if you see a solution that you would agree to, we'll be happy to, whether it's easement or, providing or designating parking spots. It doesn't have to be behind, let's say, the post office lot is out of the question because we don't know what the lease looks like. But there is another lot where the entire strip is on, and we have 60 parking spaces behind that strip. So let's say the post office lot is out of the question. We still have plenty of parking that we can provide for this building. It may be a little 20 feet longer walk to your car, but we can still provide it. And I don't think it says.
They could deed it to them, maybe. But it's
I
not
suppose they
developed.
could deed it to them, but I don't know that, we're once again not accomplishing what the bylaws really allow us to do, save for those rare circumstances where they're designated. I mean, we did it once, and only once in my tenure on this board have we ever granted off-premises parking for a commercial use. And that was with respect to a restaurant that was existing. They wanted to do some interior improvements and add an upstairs that might have added another 4 or 5 people at a time. And to accommodate that, they brought all their employees over across town and then bussed them in. That's how that was resolved.
Yeah. Mr. Chairman, under Section 301.4.2, it does say in B2, B3, and HMOD 2 districts, which this is, up to 30% of the required parking spaces may be located on a contiguous lot, not separated by a way from the lot containing the permitted use, if all said parking spaces are within a radius of 200 feet from the lot containing the permitted use.
Can you show me where that's true here?
Well, this is an adjacent site that butts, so if they were having parking to the back of the post office, as shown on the...
That's not contiguous to this lot.
Yeah.
Not if there's a leasehold there that breaks it up. See, if you can, I'll tell you what, if you can come back to this
There isn't a
board and tell
leasehold.
us the post office agrees to allow 4 of your spaces over there to be dedicated to this, well, what's the matter with that? That's a contiguous lot.
It's not a leasehold.
Pardon me?
It's just a regular.
Do they pay you rent?
Or
Rent.
that's what a
It's-
leasehold.
That's what a leasehold is.
Okay.
Yeah, you actually carve out a
That's the
piece of
legal
your
term,
big
yeah.
property,
Okay.
and you give them the sole and exclusive use of this. That's why they pay you rent.
See, we don't know under that lease, there may be something that says that they've got 200 feet to the back of the post office, it's their exclusive use area
It doesn't
for
say
parking.
that.
It probably doesn't.
It doesn't.
But we don't know that.
maybe, can we,
The old lease did not, and, yeah.
why don't we introduce the lease before it's signed? So maybe,
When are you going to negotiate the lease?
can we get it? Can we get the lease? Can we bring it to
My
the
lawyer's on
board?
vacation.
Is it possible to abolish the property lines, to make this one piece of property?
Oh, please.
That-
I was just asking.
If they want to erase the property line,
if you buy 2 adjoining lots.
they can erase the property line if they want, but it's not going to solve the problem.
So all these lots are continuous, so there's a right-of-way. So we are actually proposing a one-way traffic. Before, it was a two-way traffic. We're making a lot of improvements on this site as far as safety. People used to cut through here. We're proposing a speed bump, so people don't cut through the entire property, which is a hazard to people that go to the post office. So we're working closely with Mark Grills to make all the changes that would help residents and visitors of the post office and the entire plaza. So, and there's only so much we can do with this small lot. And as I said, if there was no time constraints, We may get rid
But
of
the time
parking.
constraint isn't our problem.
I asked him that.
With all due respect, the time constraint is not our problem. Our problem is to assure that what you're putting up here meets zoning requirements, number one, and I'd like to have you tell me where it is that we would have a 9.5 site
As I said, we can rebuild.
parking.
We can rebuild it and it's gonna look a lot worse, and it won't be safe. By law, we can't do it.
I
you
don't
like
think,
us-
I don't
would you
really
like
think
us
you
to
should
do it?
threaten this board with what you can do. That's not helping you. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. How many parking spots are you showing on this proposed plan?
7.
How many?
7.
9.5 required. Okay, I'm not gonna approve it tonight, I'll tell you that. I wouldn't approve it.
May I interject one thing?
Sure.
We're not just doing this lot and then the other large one. It's happening together. In
I
a
don't know
few
that.
days.
I've been hearing
Well-
things happening there for 40 years, 30 years.
Let me explain
All
something.
I've seen is it go to hell.
Well, okay, and I agree with you. I absolutely, my sentiment is concurrent with what you've been saying and with your anger, because I've shared the same anger.
No, I'm sorry for the anger. That's not directed at you or anybody here. Please know that. I don't care whether you have been the owner all along or not. It's the
I
fact of
wasn't.
it's the fact of the disregard of this property.
I
But right
agree.
now, you are
I
here
agree.
before, ma'am, right now, you are here before us with a plan that shows 7 parking spaces. I'm hearing from your own engineer that you need parking relief because it requires 9.5. You're not even asking for that within what you've petitioned this board tonight for. And so I'm not going to in any way consider, my vote would be that I not consider this plan this evening, or if you require us to, that I would vote against it.
May I comment on that?
Sure. You can say anything you want, provided we do it.
When I say simultaneously with this project, and even though you're not aware of it, in a few days is the annual town meeting in which this other larger parcel is going to be addressed, and it's on the agenda.
I hope that
It
addressed
is
the way
on-
you want it to be.
We have sketches, we have very beautiful sketches, and it is in my interest, and hopefully in the interest of the town, to renovate this piece. I'm
Sure.
passionate about it, and I have been.
And I applaud you for your efforts. But here's the reality. You do not even have the request before us this evening for the relief that you need, that you're asking for in the reconstruction of this building. How are we possibly supposed to consider it? I'm told by your, and I don't know how the calculation of 9.5 comes, because quite frankly, we don't even know what uses you're putting this to. Okay? All it says to me is retail and residential. That's all it says. So how that is calculated must be calculated on the square footage, which is fine. But you're showing me 7 spots where I'm told it needs 10. I don't know where we have a half-spot parking arrangement here in the town. So 9.5 becomes 10, and so we're missing 3 parking spots. Okay? And until I have a resolution for how those parking spots are going to be added in something that you can legitimately do, and it may be as simple, just as simple as going to the postal authority and saying, we understand you have a lease, we want to dedicate 4 of our spots here for the abutting property, the contiguous property. And then you have the 4 spots that bring us to 11. Over, you have too much parking at that point. It'd be good to see 4 parking spots, 2 for employees of these residential retail businesses, and 2 for the home upstairs.
We would be happy to agree to a condition like that.
No, how can you condition it if you don't know you can do it?
Well, that was
I
a
can-
part of the site plan review. So this came about at the site plan review, and the conclusion was that we do agree to create parking, additional parking
No,
for
you
this
do.
building at the
Sure.
site plan review.
Yeah.
So that's why we're here. We're at the next step. We know that we are short. We're not trying to go around anything. And we provide as much as, as many parking spaces as we could at the property.
Sure.
We actually increased it by 1, correct, from the previous building?
It doesn't matter. It doesn't
It
matter.
doesn't
You don't
matter,
have
it's still
enough.
short, right.
Yeah.
There was no handicap, so we did create
I applaud
a
you.
handicap.
You have a beautiful
And I
design.
wish we had an extra 10 feet and we could squeeze in another two spots. we don't
Again,
have that.
I respect that you say, well, we can make that a condition. Quite honestly, I'm not going to do it I wouldn't agree to it as a condition. I would agree to it when I know it's going to happen.
Okay, can we request a continuance until we get it worked out with the post
Absolutely.
office?
And I don't think it takes a lot of time. If we can stick you on the next agenda, we'll do it. We understand your time constraints. We want to accommodate you on that. But good golly, you're going to have two things that are going to happen by the time we're back here in whatever our next meeting is. One, you're going to know what the town voted on your proposal as a whole.
Yes.
And two, you're going to be able to determine as either a condition of the present lease or the lease you're negotiating with the U.S. Postal Service, that there will be 4 spots adjacent or behind the post office, adjacent to the front of this post office, in that strip that goes down, as you say, with the speed bump, or behind, that can be utilized by this property.
Sure.
Okay? That's all I'm looking for, quite honestly. Does that satisfy you?
It does. I would say, though, there would be a condition for this relief that I'd put in, that no residential parking in the front of the building. Because if you've got all your friends coming over to visit, and
we
they
can
go
do
through that
that.
front door and up the stairs,
You can be happy.
I personally don't know how you're going to do it with 7 spots and 2 commercial places, and then the upstairs, even with all of that.
How many?
I think you need more than what, I don't know how they got that parking demand. That seems very light to me.
Well,
Maybe it's
don't-
just because it's.
I don't even know that, I don't know that it's even an accurate statement, because if it is,
Should've been told they
why
did that.
aren't they seeking relief from parking right tonight? When they are presenting plans that show what I'm being told require 10 parking spaces,
Well-
but there's no request for relief on
Well, they-
it. So what would we be approving? Them to build a building that they might not be able to occupy?
Well, you filled this out, right?
Somebody did.
No, what is that
That's your application for relief.
Yeah, we did, yes.
Yeah.
for me?
You missed something.
Well, we can continue it, but, we can't grant them relief unless it's, do we have to have that legal advertisement amended?
What?
What are they asking for?
They're asking for a building
Yeah,
height.
If they can give us parking,
It's just a
sufficient
building height
parking,
thing.
they don't need relief.
If we get approval.
That's true.
In the annual meeting for the larger lot, and we are able to prove that we can dedicate certain spaces, to the building we're talking about tonight, would that satisfy?
I think what would satisfy me is, personally, I'm just speaking for myself, not for anybody else on this board, I will not approve anything that has inadequate parking, particularly along Route 28. I wish some fashion that parking could be behind, but you've now explained why it can't,
Can't, yeah.
and I'll accept that. I think your building is beautiful, but I have to tell you, absent sufficient parking, whatever the requirement, the load must be, that's for you to determine. And if you come in before us and you say relief, then I think Sean might be right. Okay? You have to amend your petition or seek a new petition for relief on parking. You do not have sufficient, your engineer's sitting here telling us you don't have sufficient parking on site, therefore you need relief.
I think you have
See?
to re-advertise it.
Mr. Chairman, if I could just
maybe not.
offer a couple other suggestions if they're going to be bringing
you.
this back, which I would, yes. That the one-way travel lanes only require 10 feet, although more than that would be nice. I think we can make the little landscape island in the front, which is literally about a foot and a half wide, that could be wider and greener. You do have enough room there because it's actually 16 feet right now. So you do have some extra space there. Right now, you've got as per the fire department, the open curb cut that's there now is 42 feet. I know design and site plan had asked for that to be reduced to 24 feet. Fire department said they'd like to see 30 feet. It would be nice if that curb cut could be reduced to the 30 feet as requested by the fire department. those are two pretty easy things that can be incorporated here, along with the parking issue and next door and so forth that we've been talking about. So if we're coming back with something somewhat different, if those could be incorporated as well, that would make me happy.
You know, I know you raised the issue of, well, it's under the auspices of the Massachusetts Department of Highway, but please understand that that's only if you're seeking to increase a curb cut. The state has no interest in whether you keep a curb cut open or not into a private property. If you want to close it, you can close it. And if the fire department says it would like to see it at 30 and our site plan review says 24, the fire department should control, but nobody else. So what are you showing it as now, 30?
It's 42 now.
42.
Why can't it come down to 30 as requested?
To get the fire truck in there,
What?
for the fire truck movement to get in there, they want it bigger.
They wanted it
They're the ones
30.
that requested 30 feet.
No.
No,
It's currently 42, am I right?
Yeah.
Site plan wanted it reduced to 24.
Right.
The fire department came back and said, no, we need 30.
Right.
So we want 30. That's all we want to see for a curb cut. We'd love to see curb cuts reduced along with
but
Route 28.
we know that they need more because we have simulations of the fire truck. They need more than, they don't know that. The fire department doesn't know how much they need.
That's what they told us.
Right, well.
They don't know what they
John
need.
is the engineer.
Do you have
He-
this note from 2 days ago?
Right, but we did the simulation. The fire truck's gonna go over the curb, so that's what we're trying to say, that it's not gonna work. They're gonna need more.
Fire engine can get into a 30-foot curb cut.
They can get it anywhere if they want, so that's what Lieutenant Hawk
also
was saying,
stop
like,
in the middle of 28.
they will go over the curb, they will destroy the tires, they hate to do it, so.
But once he gets in, he has to turn left, say, immediately, and he's not going to have enough
He's just
room.
coming in like this. I mean, that's pretty.
And the fire captain, he would take his truck down there and see how it works, but that truck is out under maintenance for a couple months, I believe.
So the fire department doesn't know what it needs for a curb cut
There's,
on their apparatus? I've never heard of such a thing. We just did one design over on.
I mean, this letter's
on-
talking 30 feet, and it's all, it's copied and everything else to the fire department. I mean, they seem to be part of this decision for 30 feet.
Right, but you have to take to the account, it's not just the curb cut, it's the turning radius. Now, we have to
It's a one-way boulevard, isn't it?
account that there's parking spots here. So if you have cars over here, they need a turning radius. It's not just to pull in. If this was a road that just goes straight, it would work with a 30. But they have to turn, they can't, they can pull in, but they won't be able to get, get into the road. Do you know what I'm trying to say?
Can I make
They don't have the
can I make a
radius.
realistic statement
All
here?
I'm saying is-
If there's a fire at that
They'll get-
place,
that's what
they're
I-
not pulling
that's-
in.
that's-
They're
They'll stop
stopping
on the
right on
highway.
28
That's-
and running right over the curb.
I was just going to say, they just went through it.
Yeah, I mean, if there's a fire there,
Correct.
no one's, just like when there was a fire there.
right.
They didn't pull into the parking lot
Stayed
to
on
put
the
the fire out.
I truly think that the fire department should decide what it needs for a curb cut, and not somebody's speculation.
Okay.
They have stated 30 feet. Mr. Martin, is that what you were suggesting, that be reduced
That's
to what
what
the...
they did, yeah.
There you go. There you go. We want to give you the
Site
relief
plan
you're looking
fire.
for, but we need to have the relief we want to see on it,
Sure,
too.
and
We're fine with that.
we'll be
Okay?
happy to do it.
So, when is the opportunity, first of all, we need to figure out, if you're willing to agree to a continuance, we would then vote on that motion. We would need you to sign a document that acknowledges we will not be making a decision, and that we are proceeding to a continued hearing in which we will have the additional time within which to make the decision following the close of all hearing on this matter. So we are talking about a meeting that our wonderful Ms. Clark is going to tell us would be available to you reasonably to discuss this. When is that?
The next one is November 24th,
24?
14th rather, excuse me.
thank you.
14.
14th.
Oh, okay, I'm not going to be here, which may be a benefit to you.
That's good news for you.
I'm not going to be here, I'm going to be in Florida. So I do know one of our alternates was here tonight. Is he still here? Are you going to be available on the 14th? All right, and so is everybody else on this board available on the 14th?
Can I see a calendar real quick?
Mr. Chairman, I think that's the
Right here.
night that the
Can I
Board
go?
of Selectmen is dealing with the wastewater, and I think that's the night that the Board of Selectmen is going to have a meeting with the community, the community preservation group to discuss
14th, yeah, I'm
financing. for the
I'm here
wastewater.
on that.
Okay, so they'll just move us to another location.
Okay, but I will be going to that meeting.
Oh, you're going to that meeting? What's the next meeting after the 14th?
December 12th?
Oh, because of Thanksgiving.
December 12th.
Why can't we have a meeting on the, with no meeting?
Because I might not be,
She
I
may
might be
not be
going to the
available.
Board of Selectmen meeting that night with the wastewater group and the CPC to talk about funding for the wastewater.
And here we have 1, 2, 3 of our only 1, 2, 3 alternates, and unfortunately, Tim can't be a voting member on it because he doesn't meet the criteria. He has to attend so many meetings before he can vote.
Is that a Thursday night? Is the fourth?
we have
They just.
Until July
Tom Barron.
17th or something,
Well,
so.
I can tell you this, you can either go to the December meeting, where you'll have 5 members here to vote, or we will have are you going to be here? A 4-member meeting, 1 Mr. Martin, 2 Mr. Igo, 3 Mr. Nicanello, and our wonderful assistant, co-worker, Mr. Barron, who's out in the audience, has watched the whole petition, wouldn't even need to see a video. But he would sign an endorsement, a statement saying he was here. That would give you 4 members. I just want to tell you how our board works. On a 4-member board, 1 member says no, you're out. You lose. Okay?
Of course, on a 5, if 2 members say no, you lose. So,
So you can have a 5, a 4, and 1, and you win. On a 4-member board, 1 votes no, you lose because you only have 3 votes, and you're required to have 4 votes. If that matters to you, that's a risk you take, that you're going to have to get a unanimous board, okay? Or come in 2 weeks later and have a fully constituted board with 5 people you've already heard love the plan. You just want to see some resolutions to it. What's your
So-
pleasure? What's your pleasure?
Provided we're able
Is there
to,
another option of another alternate that's not here?
Who's that?
Viewing the tape? Like Doug Campbell or
Dick
who else we got?
Neitz.
Dick Neitz?
Sure, sure. If they're willing to do it, sure.
We don't know that right now.
We don't know that really. Yeah.
I don't have the solution. What do you want to do?
So can we agree to the closer date, and then if there's no one available for the 5th member, then we can
Okay,
postpone
but
till...
we could do that only if you agreed you would come in and sign another extension. Okay? So if, we will try to accommodate you on the closest date, November 14. If they cannot, you want a full 5-member board, I suggest to you, but that's up to you. You can proceed any way you want.
I also won't be here, but you'll be here.
They need to re-advertise it too, right?
Well, what are they re-advertising? They need to re-advertise that you need, you're the people coming in and telling us what you need for relief. I'm telling you right now, there's been no request made to us for additional parking. That relief needs to be published and requested. Okay, so you need to amend your petition, it. Can you advertise it for that meeting?
do you think they need parking relief if they provide the spots, or you're saying because
The site doesn't accommodate 9, 10 spaces.
It has been.
There's no way around that.
Right, but like I said,
Although they do provide the easement on the adjacent site for the adjacent.
Yeah, but that's usually only through requested relief, because again, we have a bylaw that says you can't, oh, you pointed out
Yeah, there is a section.
under 403.
Yeah.
Okay, if it's contiguous.
Yeah, but they'd have to show that there were dedicated spaces legally provided within that site. Yeah.
If all I needed to do was grant that relief through an easement,
If you can.
Of course I can. Why
Yeah, but
couldn't I?
we'll have.
Because you're
we'll have
leasing the property to the federal government.
Okay.
The
All right.
federal government might say, gee, that's nice, but you're not taking our parking away from us.
But can't it be anywhere else on the other 70 spaces that are being designed right now?
Probably, it depends on your lease, yeah. How your lease is written, or how you.
I don't
or how you
think the
decide to
federal
write it.
government has control of your entire place, but we don't
Right, that's what
know.
I'm saying.
Right. We don't know what they lease.
only-
Guys, really, I want to move it along,
Yeah,
okay?
yeah, it's-
What night do you want?
We'll do it in November.
November 14?
Right.
You decide, you need to come to us telling us what you're looking for relief. And then if we approve what you're asking for, and you haven't asked for the requisite relief, that's your problem, not ours. We're not here to tell you what to do.
Correct. Originally, we were coming out of the bylaw that allows us to rebuild, so we were looking at different components that we comply with and what we don't, and that's why we just seeking the relief from the height, because the parking is the same as it was. That's why we didn't see the need to seek relief, because there was 7,
That's your
and we have
Just-
7.
We're not faulting you for it, it's just that it's not here.
You're not the first person to do that.
Okay, and you're gonna build this, let's say you build the structure and now you go to get an occupancy permit, and
I agree.
the building says to you, we can't give it to you because you don't have requisite parking.
Go back to
Guess
the Board
what?
of Appeals.
Guess what? You build the building for nothing. So who wants to sign off on this, who's the
authority to?
Who's the authority between the two of you to sign? You're the petitioner, so why don't you march up if you would, please? And this is an agreement that we're going to continue it to November 14, 2019. Before you actually sign it, though, is somebody prepared to make a motion to grant the petitioner's request?
I'd like to make a motion that we grant the petitioner's request to continue the matter until November 14th.
Okay, seconded by Mr. Nicanello. No need for conversation, I'm presuming. All those in favor of the motion to continue to November 14, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, that carries unanimously. You'll be thrilled that I won't be here. Here we go. If you'd sign right there where it says applicant petitioner, okay? And then if you just date your signature. Wait a minute, am I getting it right? Excuse me, I'm sorry, I'm looking. Petitioner or age, right there. I'm so sorry, right there, yes. And then put your date in it next to it. And today's the 10/24.
We could have moved the bounding lines.
No, right over here, if you would. Yeah, thank you. All right. So that passes unanimously. We'll see you on 11/14. Good luck.
All right, thank you.
Thank you very much.
With that, we move to adjourn, and so we are adjourned, right?
Adjourned.
Thank you.